So far this year, we have read 12 combined books in our 2 book clubs, and today I'm going to rank them from worst to first. So again, we have 2 clubs, the History Sickos book club and the Fantasy Sickos book club. I'm going to break this into halves. We'll start with the Fantasy Sickos book club, which also had a fiction month thrown in there for variety. And that's actually a bit of a prelude for what's to come, because I'm going to start transitioning that club to more of a general fiction umbrella, where we vote on like 4 books from various genres like fantasy, literary fiction, historical fiction, science fiction, and so on. For example, in July, we switched up to an all science fiction vote, and we landed on Of Monsters and Mainframes by Barbara Truelove, which excites the hell out of me for 2 reasons. Number 1, I have heard nothing but awesome things in the reviews about this book. Number 2, this was published by a fellow bindery publishing imprint, Easy Cat Press, so I love that we get to support Jason's imprint. I had the extreme pleasure of meeting Jason at BookNet Fest in Orlando last month, and he's amazing, like such a cool guy. Like, I already loved his content, but getting to hang out with him, it just put him on another level of respect and admiration, and I'm trying to get on his level. Recently, my publishing imprint, Kissed Reads, announced its first acquisition, The Devil's Rules. The author, Shona, is going to be going by the pen name S.V. Lockwood, and this is a super polished fantasy heist novel. Think Six of Crows for adults, or A Female-Led Lies of Locke Lamora, and you're on the right track. I cannot wait to share that with the world. And by subscribing to my bindery, you're not only supporting my efforts there, as a large chunk of the subscription revenue goes towards like the resources needed to acquire and publish a book, but you also unlock all of our Discord server channels, which is where we vote on and discuss all of the book club picks. Anyway, I'm going to be talking about The Devil's Rules nonstop for a year plus, so let's keep it moving here. Speaking of which, we're going to run through these really quick. I've got some brief thoughts on each. I'm going to include thoughts from the book club members, but if you want to deep dive on any of these, I've included the months for each book in the description, and that can be your guide, because I've already got full reviews for all of these in my monthly wrap-ups, except for the June books, because that video will be coming out sometime next week. So again, we'll start with the 6 books that the Fantasy Sickos have read and how I'd rank them from worst to first. The second half will be the History Sickos. Let's get it. Coming in at number 6 for the Fantasy Sickos is Watermoon by Samantha, Sotto, Yambao. I gave it 2.5 stars. I'm really bummed because I love this cover. I don't have the book anymore because I gave it to a better home. I just found it so flat on so many levels. I didn't connect with any of the characters. It's got the insta-love trope, which I like automatically hate. The imagery was, of course, absolutely beautiful, and I've said it multiple times, but yeah, this would make a better, like, anime or movie than it would an actual book. I found the plot kind of meandered for a while. We also zipped from one location to the next location without really exploring it enough at times, but my issues with that are well detailed in my previous review. I'm going to kick it to something that one of our book club members said. They said, quote, "I do wholeheartedly agree that this would be a way better as a movie, and that might solve some issues that people have with it jumping around. I enjoyed the story for what it was, and I felt that it was written in an easy to digest way, and words flowed together. I finished it really quickly, taking in between 50 to 100 pages per reading session, which is unusual for me." So that's a member that enjoyed it a lot more than I did. I think the consensus was this was a bit disappointing as a group, and that's why it comes in 6th. At number 5 was The Blacktongue Thief by Christopher Buehlman, which really bums me out because I loved Between Two Fires. That was like a 4 3/4 star book for me. It's like this mix of historical fiction / horror / fantasy. I just gobbled that freaking thing up. And The Blacktongue Thief, like I've said it before, but like I'm never going to think about this book again. So it's got like the grimdark style that I like, and the characters are interesting and the dialogue is good, but it was just missing something for me. I just never connected with the plot at a level that made it like a compulsive read for me, and it was just very forgettable for me. So I gave it 3.25 stars. One of the other members said, quote, I die for Kinch and Galva, two of the main characters. I love their dynamic. I love Kinch's wittiness and how Buehlman wrote him as like an unabashed, roguish fiend. I was very easily captivated by the story, and I look forward to seeing The Daughter's War, or forward to reading The Daughter's War. 0.25 taken off as some parts felt a little bit slow, but they didn't overall ruin the story for me, end quote. And I do agree with some of that. The wittiness, like this was a fun book, and the dialogue was funny at times, and those two main characters were pretty solid. And they also mentioned like the pacing issues. I did feel like when you got to the middle portion of the book, things just kind of came to a standstill, but that didn't ruin this person's enjoyment of the book. So don't take my word as gospel. This person enjoyed it more than me. I think as a whole, the book club enjoyed it. So it's still worth the shot if you've read Buehlman's work, if you like his stuff, if it sounds intriguing to you. But for me, it just didn't click. So that's why I came in at number 5. This one's going to be a bit controversial. Dungeon Crawler Coll by Matt Dinniman comes in at number 4. I might as well hold the book up since I still have this one. I liked it. I didn't love it. Some of the humor for this was hit or miss. Like the early info dumping, which like I understand needs to happen to kind of set up the video game vibe here, was a little slow. But even then, I think the only thing I really connected with was Princess Donut. I love Princess Donut. She carried the book for me. And the other thing that carried the book for me was in fact the audiobook. I did do the audiobook along with this as an immersion read. And that's the other thing for me too. Like anytime I mention that this is just like an okay book, everyone like asks like, did you do the audiobook? You have to do the audiobook. And yeah, I did the audiobook, but at the same time, I don't think it should need that. Like the audiobook is a elite performance. Like give Jeff Hayes like all the flowers, but that shouldn't be necessary. So just by a book by itself, I gave it 3.5 stars. It comes in at number 4. And look, I read the second book as well, Carl's Doomsday Scenario. I liked it a touch more for different reasons. I like the tone shift. I am going to continue with the series. I think it's a great palate cleanser, as one of our book members here, book club members, is going to point out. But yeah, let me kick it to that, because I think as a club, people really enjoyed it. And some of them are already like caught up with the series. So again, my word is not gospel. I'm just one dude. The club on the whole enjoyed it. One person said, quote, boy, this was a treat. Definitely far better than I expected. The characters are fantastic and have quirks and flaws that had me wanting to learn more. The story moves along without dragging, and I never know what to expect. I'm definitely going to continue the series, even if it's between other reads, as a palate cleanser, end quote. I think this is just like a great book to throw in between like chonkers or more serious books. So I still would like recommend it. It just didn't hit for me the way that it hit for other people. I'm kind of bummed about that, but what are you going to do? At number 3 for me was Anji Kills a King. I gave it 3.75 stars. I recently interviewed Leikam, the author here, on this channel. So check that out if you want like to get to know the author and kind of get like some of the thinking behind some of the decisions that he made in this book, which I found very interesting. But yeah, I mean, the plot of this is very straightforward. It's literally on the thing. Sorry for the ring light glare there. I'll try to angle that. Anyway, Anji kills a king, and she's got to figure out things from there, because it's not great for her. And look, this was a very solid book. I needed more from the world building. I told Evan that, and he agreed, and he wants to expand on that in book 2. But this movie, that's such a fast pace, man. It was such a fun ride. I really clicked with the prose and the writing. Like, dude's got real chops. And one of our members, I think, kind of like agrees with the sentiment of the group, because we all kind of felt the same way. They said, quote, good, not great book. I feel like we all have the same thoughts on this one. I liked the book due to the fast-paced, gory action, and thought it was an easy, enjoyable read. The menagerie characters were twisted and awesome. My big knock is I wanted more world building throughout so bad. I'm so intrigued by the various magic and monsters in the world, but was always left wanting more. And I think we are going to get, end quote, and I think we are going to get more of that in book 2, which I'm really excited about. Evan's got a lot of potential as an author, and I really enjoyed this one. Comes in at number 3 for me. At number 2, we had a switch up with the fiction sickos for a month. That was The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. I gave it 4 stars. Look, this was a mixed bag in a lot of respects, mainly because there's one POV that is elite, and that's Good Stab. And that doesn't really get going until like you get further into the book. But then when it grabs you, like it really grabs you. And I don't even want to talk about like what's going on with Good Stab, because I think the marketing did this book a disservice by kind of like talking about Good Stab's affliction in it so much to where it kind of ruined the suspense in the first part of the book. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, don't seek that out, because I think you'll enjoy it more. The problem that I had with the book was the pastor's POV is written like in such an archaic language that it was very confusing and like hard to understand at times. So he had to reread like a bunch of stuff to like get a firm grasp on what they were saying. And there were some pacing issues, I think, in the middle part. But other than that, like, this was a damn good time, and it had something to say about its themes. One of the book club members said, quote, "I loved almost every aspect of it. It felt real every moment I was reading it, and the horror aspects shocked me into wakefulness in brutal ways that were perfect. I'm going to need some kind of Good Stab merch. My man had me picturing everything so clearly. His POV was downright riveting. My pipe is empty indeed," which is a reference from the book. Yeah, Good Stab was incredible and definitely hard carried this book. But yeah, I think this was an interesting experience. I still obviously really enjoyed it because I gave it 4 stars, but there were some frustrating aspects to it, and I think this might be like a real hit or miss type book. And like, to kind of like further go into the genre that it is, it's like a mix of historical fiction and horror, more like historical horror, but more on the historical side of things. It's not like spooky, scary horror. So I just wanted to qualify that. Anyway, solid book. I enjoyed it. No surprise to anyone. The Devils by Joe Abercrombie was a 5-star read for me, and my best book that the Fantasy Sickos book club have read this year. I had read this before last year with an advanced reader copy through NetGalley. I got to meet Joe Abercrombie in Georgia. That was a blast. I have a full Joe Abercrombie reading guide on this channel. So I've already talked about this book a bunch and my love for it. I'm definitely biased towards Abercrombie. His writing, just like, it's cozy to me. That's my version of cozy. Anyway, I'll kick it to one of the book club members who says, quote, "Abercrombie writes amazing books, so to say this isn't his best work doesn't mean it isn't very good. The plot felt like he was playing it safe, and it was predictable at times, though he does poke at this himself near the end of the book. However, the character work shines as ever, and I found myself attached to them all at the end. A lot of fun, and I'll definitely read the follow-ups." And yeah, that was a person that enjoyed it less than me, but still had a really good time with this. I really felt like on the second read-through of this, I appreciated the character work a bit more, especially with the character Sunny, who is just like, she's everything. Anyway, this is like a fast-paced, fun romp. Definitely the fastest paced book that Abercrombie has. I think it would be a great introduction to his work, especially since the other introduction point is like the blade itself, and maybe that's not the best. Anyway, I am retreading a bunch here of the stuff that I talked about on the Joe Abercrombie reading guide, so I'm going to shut up now and just say that this is the best book that I've read with the Fantasy Sickos book club this year. All right, so now we are on to the History Sickos book club. 6 books. Let's go through them from worst to first. My number 6 was Pandora's Jar, Women in Greek Myths by Natalie Haynes at 3 stars. Really mixed bag with this one for me. I loved some of the chapters, right? Like, because this goes through like various characters all up in the table of contents here to kind of give you an idea of where we are with that. But it starts off with Pandora, and I thought that chapter was amazing. So I had high hopes for this when it started out. Jocasta, Helen, Medusa, the Amazons, Clytemnestra, and just like Medea. Just a bunch of different chapters, and some of them are a lot better than the others. Like, I remember the Medusa chapter really stood out to me. And what she kind of does is she explores the myth itself in the first part of the chapter, and then she'll kind of like give analysis throughout, and then she'll do some like modern references, and like the modern references didn't really hit for me. Like, if you want like Beyonce references, Wonder Woman references, that type of thing, then it's going to be more your style. But I don't know, it didn't do a whole lot for me. So very much a mixed bag, but I would still kind of like recommend it, especially if you want an introduction to like Greek myths and stuff like that. So like, as one of our book club members points out, quote, "It's been a fantastic introduction to the myths on its own merit, but I'll see to others' criticism on the finer points." They continue, "Another strength of Haynes' writing is definitely her humor. I've avoided myth for a long time because it felt really inaccessible, but she wrote this book in a way that makes it feel colloquial and relevant," end quote. So they enjoyed it more than me. I think the book club, it was also mixed on it on the whole, but this may hit for you, so give it a try if it's a topic that interests you. Number 5 for me was The Achilles Trap, Saddam Hussein, the CIA, and the Origins of America's Invasion of Iraq by Steve Coll at 3.25 stars, which, again, is just like bummed out again because I read Ghost Wars by Steve Coll, which is a similar book with a similar framework, but like through an Afghanistan lens. And I really like that one. I think I read that like 10 years ago, so I don't know. But this one started out strong in the first third, and then the second and third parts of the book just did not keep up that momentum. It did not work for me at a level that I thought it would. I agree with this book club member when they say, quote, solid overview of the relationships between the U.S. administrations and Saddam that led to the invasion of Iraq. If you are already familiar with the subject matter, I didn't think there was much groundbreaking revelations in here, end quote. I totally agree with that. So unfortunately, this did fall short. But if you want more background on this relationship, then you can have this and not have a terrible time. Number 4 for me was Unruly, The Ridiculous History of England's Kings and Queens by David Mitchell at 3.5 stars. English history is like one of my strengths, especially when you're talking about like the Plantagenets and like the forming of England and the Vikings and all of that stuff. So I don't know if I learned anything new from this, but I had a darn good time. This is like humor mixed with history. He's a comedian. He also studied a lot of history, so he knows his stuff. But it's done in a very unserious way. I think I pointed out before, but like the best parts of the book is when he talks about how like weird historians can get when it comes to like rewriting history or wanting to like change the way we see a certain thing, like, you know, Ricardians and stuff like that. But yeah, I still had a good time with this, even though I didn't learn much. I also think that for people not really well versed in this subject, that this would be like a great entry point, especially for like beginner and casual history readers. So I still would recommend this to a certain crowd. If you know a lot about this topic, it's not going to do a whole lot for you, but it is still fun. So keep that in mind. One of the book club members said, quote, it was an okay read, good for those that are not well versed in English royalty, but not anything groundbreaking or worth writing home about. I'm also not entirely sure how Mitchell's sarcastic brand of humor will go over on this side of the pond, end quote. I think I've recommended before, because I agree with this, that if you're not sure if the humor is going to hit with you, either like preview the audiobook in like Audible or something like that, or if you see it in the store, pick it up and just kind of like read the intro. You'll kind of get a good understanding there. If there's a preview on Kindle or something like that, try it out and see if the humor is going to hit for you, because that's going to be a big factor in your enjoyment of this book. But yeah, again, I would recommend it to a certain group of people for the reasons I just stated and that person stated as well. And number 3 for me was Empires of the Sea, The Siege of Malta, The Battle of Lepanto, and The Contest for the Center of the World by Roger Crowley. What a long subtitle. I gave this 4.25 stars. I really did enjoy Crowley's 1453, which is about the siege of Constantinople by the Ottomans, when they essentially wipe out the remnants of the Byzantine Empire. And this is kind of a continuation of that thread later on with the Ottomans then going up against the Habsburgs, you know, down the line. He's just a really solid narrative history writer. It makes things really clear. And things don't ever really like slow down or slog down or anything like that. If anything, this one could have used a bit more detail. 1453 was focused on one thing, so you could kind of get into the nitty gritty. This was lacking some of that, as one of the book club members pointed out. They said, quote, I enjoyed reading about the naval combat from a technical engineering level. It's fascinating seeing naval combat after the ancient world and prior to the age of sail. It was very narrative instead of authoritative. I missed some of the more technical aspects of the politics at play, end quote. And I do agree with that criticism. That's why it's not a 5-star book for me like 1453 was, but at 4.25 stars, I would definitely still recommend Empires of the Sea. And number 2 at 4.5 stars, The Radium Girls, The Dark Story of America's Shining Women by Kate Moore. This rocked so hard. This is another like narrative history book where you're following this group of women that are painting these radium dials, and like I think they started in like 1919 if I'm remembering correctly, but it takes you through the 20s and the 30s and their battle, because essentially what's happening is as they're ingesting this radium that they don't know is bad for them, this radium is poisoning them to the point where like they can pick out pieces of their jaw, and it's just like it's one of those books that just made me feel physical discomfort while I was reading it. And it's so frustrating because of all the forces working against them to like get the truth about radium out there and the effects that it was having on them. Because like as they're painting these radium dials, they're using like the lip dip paint technique. So they're taking these brushes, dipping it in radium, and then like wetting the brush. So they're just like straight up ingesting radium, and it's wreaking havoc on their health in all types of ways. And the companies responsible for this are trying to deny everything, and they're bringing in specialists that are on their payroll, and they're saying everything's fine. Anyway, they go through this big court battle, and this kind of like details all of that. But yeah, I freaking love this. I was also very, very frustrated by it. Let's go to one of our book club members and what they said about it. So he said, quote, "I've never been so mad and also so sad reading a book. The author did a really good job showcasing some of the women's lives. I found myself wanting to cry multiple times because I can't believe what they went through. And I'm so mad that most of the women didn't get justice. The historical significance of how these events are relevant even today makes me feel at least that the girls have a legacy that will continue to live on," end quote. Well said. And finally, at number 1, I'm talking about it again. It's The Coming of the Third Reich by Richard J. Evans. This is part of the history of the Third Reich trilogy. I've said for a while now that I'm going to do a full review on this trilogy, and I swear that is still coming because I cannot recommend it enough. These are beefers, man. These are big boys. 2,500 pages in all for the trilogy, but at like one point in book 2, there was a tiny bit of a slog, and it was my only non-5-star read of that trilogy. But on the whole, this thing still keeps it moving and covers so many topics, and it's like on that like edge of popular history meets like academic. It's right in that middle ground where it may not be super accessible for like casual and beginner readers, but at the same time, it moves at such a good, solid pace where you get pretty much everything that you need. It's a hell of an achievement to see how this thing plays out. And one of our book club members echoed this, quote, "The book was wonderfully written and kept at a pace that kept my interest and spoke volumes on how a vocal minority came to power and how they quickly solidified it once they came through the ranks. Feel like this should be mandatory reading for anyone with an interest or studying World War II," end quote. Absolutely. I think this is just, if you're a World War II person or a fan of German history, not a fan of German history, but just like interested in German history, I want to be careful with that because it's horrific. But if you have an interest in this topic, this is the one. This trilogy is the one, and that's why it comes in at number 1 for me for the History Sickos book clubs. Actually, all the book clubs. This was my top read. I devoured this trilogy. I love it. I can't recommend it enough. That's it. 12 books. 12 thoughts on each of them with book club members chiming in as well. I appreciate you hanging out. As always, likes, subs, ringing the bell, stealing your girlfriend's phone and subbing to the channel as well is always appreciated, but not required. And I just thank you for hanging out with me. And I hope you can join us for the book club for our future reads. It's going to be a blast. And I will see you on the next one. If not, appreciate y'all.